Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, DevOps TV, here in London for DevOps Enterprise Summit UK 2018. And I've got what I think is going to be one of my best and favorite panels of the day. Let me introduce them and we'll get started. To my far right is the IT skeptic, Rob England. Rob, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Pretty lady in yellow next to Rob is Dr. Cherry Vu.
Don't scare me.
Cherry, welcome.
Thank you.
And then sitting to my immediate right is my partner at the DevOps Institute and friend, Jayne Groll.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Jayne.
Hi, Alan.
Okay. So, guys, the topic today is sort of crossing streams with ITSM and DevOps. You know, there was a time when I kind of first started DevOps.com 4.5 years ago, where if you told me we were going to do ITSM and DevOps at a DevOps show, I would have said you're crazy.
Yeah.
ITSM is dying, DevOps is replacing it. That's the old, out with the old and with the new. But what we've seen, right, over the last 2.5, 3 years, is that there is a place where these come together for the good of IT and humanity. Rob, you've kind of led a lot of that charge, right? You also were a skeptic of DevOps.
I was.
And then kind of went the other way, right?
Well, once I sort of had a bit of a road to Damascus conversion there somewhere. But after that, I was talking about DevOps run, you know, that I think when the DevOps community talks about ops, they don't always mean what we think of when we think of ops. It's sort of ops until it's live.
Right.
You know, and that whole ops after it's live still tends to get lost, and it's a lot, not all, but you know, there's, as Cherry puts it, there's less emphasis that's talked about, but it sort of dies away a bit, doesn't it? Once you get once the stuff's live, it's.
Well, you know what? Let me hear what Cherry has to say.
I consider that DevOps and ITIL is kind of happy married together because they actually support each other and they make each other better. So I think it's a happy marriage if we do it right. And as Jayne said in her presentation, that they need to have better communication between the both and speak the same language, understand each other, and that's it. We are looking forward to the same goal, so why should we separate?
We kind of went tribal for a while there, is how I put it. We went to war for a while. There was ding dong, ITIL is dead, as you said, yeah,
right.
You know, and
there was.
And the service management people going, oh, these free-range cowboys, they're dangerous. That was me in the early days.
Yeah, but I think there's a couple of problems there. I think, first of all, when we talk about IT service management, we only talk about ITIL. And so while ITIL is the most predominant of the frameworks and has given many of us a lot of best practices about IT service management, I think the concern was that ITIL wasn't current and ITIL didn't address DevOps and it was very much about ITIL. And again, there's nothing wrong with the ITIL library, but services still need to be managed. And I think that's probably what's trending now, is that there's a recognition that you still need to manage change, right? You still need to do a lot of what you did. And to address something that Rob just said, you're right. You know, the original DevOps approach was you press the button, it goes into production, and then you start again. And it was like, what happens life after deployment? And that's, I think, trending a little bit now as well.
Well, it's more than trending a little bit. I would tell you that a trend, not to overuse the word, but a trend that I've seen here it does this year is a recognition that as DevOps is maturing, we're recognizing where its not limitations are, but where it ends, begins, meetups with other things, right? And so I've done a number of panels on whether you want to call it next gen ops or new ops or, you know, not no ops. Thank God that's dead.
Thank God.
I haven't heard that one, but certainly a recognition that part of the maturation of DevOps is understanding, okay, look, we've got this CI/CD thing not down perfect, but I think we've got our heads wrapped around it, right? We need to wrap our heads around what happens post-deployment. And to wrap our heads around post-deployment, to just discount 20 years of ITIL and ITSM, and, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater is a little bit ridiculous, right? And I think that's part of the maturity, right? That's a mature look at saying, oh, they're not mutually exclusive. leverage, learn how they go together. And I think that's why, frankly, all three of you presented here today over the last 2 days here at DUS to standing room only.
Yeah,
right?
it was interesting to see the response. You were saying that beforehand, Jayne, that a lot of people came.
Yeah, that was a huge surprise considering I know during my session I had some pretty good competition at the same time, and it was standing room only, and I know at your session the same thing. So there is a lot of curiosity about how do we make this work.
Is it just curiosity?
Well, I don't think
Well, it's beyond that now, isn't it? It's pressure. Richard Cook put it, Dr. Richard Cook put it an interesting way, was, and this isn't his words, but he was framing it as if we're building a new kind of technical debt, sort of, because we're now so good at pumping stuff out into production and not so good at what happens after production that we're actually piling, the issue has now moved beyond the ability to produce into the ability to run. Yeah. We can produce really well now.
I think, I do agree. DevOps tend to be very good and very focused on how to make a baby, actually, and they love having babies who look after it. So I think that's still, ITIL is much better in taking care of baby and
that's a great analogy.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that all being said, let me just play skeptic. Turnabout's fair play. ITIL numbers are down. People taking ITIL exams, I think we'd all agree. And, we'll probably see a spike with the next version of ITIL, but a lot of that will be sort of a momentary spike of people moving up. So, unfortunately, DevOps is appreciating ITIL just as ITIL seems to be, coming down. But will this kind of rapprochement between DevOps and ITIL see a renaissance, perhaps, of ITIL and ITSM as it?
That depends very much how they do ITIL 4, doesn't it? So you've got adaptive labs and adaptive capacity labs. You've got the snafu catchers. You've got SRE coming out of Google. You've got these amazing new ways, new lenses on the same reality, but they're deconstructing service management and reinventing it through in almost a naive way. They're almost coming with no prior art and then saying, what does it look like? Applying DevOps Agile principles. If that gets absorbed well into ITIL, and if they're good at learning from those things and incorporating it, then it could really be a rebirth for ITIL. But if ITIL just sort of refreshes version 3, then it's not going to work. So it's how agile do they make ITIL, really?
Yeah.
But I say, if you look at the 9 principles of ITILs now, we see that how much is different to DevOps.
The ITIL practitioner.
It's exactly what we are looking at, like focus on the value or start from the small where we are now, or whatever Agile says, just in an ITIL practitioner.
They did a good job, didn't they?
In the
ITIL practitioner book, what I call ITIL 3.5,
they're transforming themselves.
Yeah, they're in the process of reinventing themselves already.
But and I'll be a little bit of devil's advocate myself. So unfortunately, when we start to look at 9 principles versus 3 ways versus partridge in a pear tree kind of thing, then we're still at the same place where we're still trying to recreate the core and we're not doing it together. And I think that of all the disconnects that we've seen is that we're not collaborating, we're not one IT, that the loyalty between one framework or another is still very
really
much there. I think though that when you mentioned SRE, and I think what's interesting about SRE, think about why DevOps became interesting. It was something new, it was something innovative, it was a different approach for a modern age, right? Really not that different, right? It's about release, right? It's really about build, test, deploy, something that comes out of Scrum and takes it into go faster, shift left, all of that. But it was new and it was cool and it's a very, very different, very modern approach. I think one of the reasons that we're seeing an increased interest in ops is largely because of SRE, that we're starting to see service level objectives. Everybody's talking about service level objectives. Where in ITIL, we've been talking about service level agreements and operational level agreements for a long time. You're talking about error budgets. You're talking about incident commanders. You're looking at a lot of kind of saying the same thing, but in a newer, a modern way. And that's resonating very much with the DevOps community. Hopefully will start to resonate with the ITIL community. And again, nothing wrong with ITIL, nothing wrong with ITIL 4, nothing wrong with ITIL 3. Yeah. But it's taking all of that and marrying it into IT. And that's our big problem is we like to label things.
Yeah. So, but I think you're focusing on technology.
No, not really, because it's practices. It's really about process and practice.
But what made DevOps cool was the cultural element, the idea of Dev and Ops working together, the blameless, that whole...
The humanity of... I grew my hair, damn it.
No, I hear you, but that was part of it.
That's all part of the DevOps. And she cut hers off.
And she cut hers off. Okay, turnabout's fair play. But no, seriously, it was that human element. And when we look at Ops, I'm really good at repeating what other people say. Yeah. Very few original thoughts. But I had someone over here in the last couple sessions, or maybe it was yesterday, whatever. We were talking about Ops. And the fact of the matter is, there's a reason why Ops people are not happy. It's because they do repetitive tasks. Boom, 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 And there's a reason... And so one of the cool factors of DevOps for them was the chance to get out of that rut, to get involved in the dev, to get involved in
release. Cool things, creative things.
Cool things, right? So how do we make Ops cool? How do we make Ops cool? Because right now, the average Ops guy, they're so unmotivated that they'll hop to the next, like fleas to the next dog for a 3% increase in pay. Right? You're going to give me, $100 more a week? I'm out of here.
But see, that's what I like about SRE. And I said SRE doesn't replace ITIL and it doesn't replace Agile. But there's a few things that come out of SRE. First of all, there's a role, right? There's a role. There's a job that people can be hired for that is a fairly...
That's exciting.
It's very exciting. Second of all, there is automation. It's an engineering approach, which we haven't taken before. But most important, I think this is missed, is that if you look at the guidance for SRE, 50% of your time is spent reducing your toil, right? Your manual effort, whatever. The other 50% is you're supposed to be learning something new. You're supposed to be thinking about the future. You're supposed to be spending, and if it works, and I don't know if it works yet, right? But if it works, then your job now became innovative because you're now charged with doing something cool, and you're given the time. Again, in a perfect environment, you're given a time to be able to do that. Now, again, let's bring in ITIL. Take SRE, marry ITIL in a much more agile way, right? All of the good stuff.
I don't know if it's marry is the right word. I think ITIL needs to figure out how to graft this, to somehow bottle this excitement, this new age ops or new, whatever you want to call it.
And that's a cultural change for the people writing ITIL.
Absolutely.
It is, very much, yeah.
And which is why I say that's what drove DevOps coolness, and that's what needs to drive Ops coolness. If ITIL's not going to embrace that cultural change, it's done.
Those they build those hospitals and they haven't got enough money to open them, and you have these huge empty clinical buildings. The ITIL books always felt to me like those sort of hospitals. It was always like, where are the people? They felt like we've built the wards and we've built the beds and we've built the machines and we're done.
Yeah.
And it didn't have that humanity to it in the books. I mean, the authors will be right on me on that one and say, there's this bit about cultural change in here and there's this bit about teaming in here. And it did address it at times, but they just still had a very clinical feel to them as books.
It was sterile.
There's nothing folksy about them.
It's religious too, and I think it's like and that wasn't the intent. I mean, we've all been in the ITSM space for a long enough time. Certainly have a long history in ITIL, and I don't think the intent was that you had to sing a hymn before you opened up the book. And the book said, do it this way, and if you didn't, you felt like you had to go to confession.
All the
right?
authors will say
Right?
that
So-
wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's how it was
Confession,
taken,
you would
wasn't
burn
it?
in
Right.
hell, but you would not go to.
But that's very much how it was taken up. I think you'll find that section 3.2.3
Yeah.
says, you know,
Right. And so that's exactly the antithesis, I think, of what we need. We need, I think today, and you could talk about millennials, I don't really care what you want to call it, but today people want to feel the ability to evolve, to grow, to improvise, to be excited.
improvise is an important word. You know, giving people, they want to feel some freedom in these things. They don't want to feel bound into a system.
You know, I had a great conversation. I'm starting to sound like Gene Kim. Just
Which is not a terrible thing.
No, but you're repeating what everyone else, right? So I had a great conversation with John Smart from the Barclays, and his crew was in here yesterday. And you know, their philosophy is, look, they have a team of people. They give them a goal. They give them the tools, and say, have at it. There are no rules beyond that. Well, there are, but you know, within reason.
Yeah, you have to have very clear policy, actually. If you're going to let people loose in a paddock, you've got to tell them where the fences are. So,
Yep.
so the one thing you want is clear policy, but nothing about the how. Nothing
Yeah,
about
I mean,
the
you
method.
don't want. I think people today don't want to feel that they need to follow the cookbook.
Well, but that's a cultural change, because if you set people loose, even though you have the fence, it's a very, very uncomfortable feeling, because many don't know if they're going to do it right. Right? Am I going to do it right? Now, maybe that's generational.
But that's DevOps.
Right, but that's
if you don't do it
generational.
right, that's okay.
Right.
But learn from your mistake.
It's okay
and
to
do it
fail,
right
but
next
that's
time.
cultural. That's your point.
That's
They're not raised.
they're not culturally trained.
If you keep
to be able
animals
to
in a
do that.
cage for years and then you let them loose in a paddock, they don't run around leaping
Yeah.
and gambling. They sit there and blink in the light.
Right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm looking for the cage.
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable, it's familiar, I understand the boundaries, and I also understand how I'll be successful, so I could pay my mortgage, support my family.
So
you know.
I would
And,
say,
and in some cultures, it's, are you going to hit me again?
Yeah.
You know?
well, that's a whole nother story.
But some organisations, right?
Yeah, no, and your meetings will continue until
Until
morale
morale
improves,
improves.
right?
There's someone say that in this culture, in our organizations, I will be shut down if I even about to stand up. So
Yeah.
that's a really common saying in many organizations.
But those, I
that's
think,
given.
are cultures
Yeah.
and IT. Those are not the high-performing IT orgs
No.
we read about in the State of DevOps report,
Exactly.
right? And I think those are the people that, you know, I mean, there'll always be some of them, but by and large, they fall by the wayside.
But probably more in ops than in dev. So dev has always been encouraged to be creative, because that's the nature of the beast, right? Is that you're building or creating something. In ops, as you said, very, very repetitive. I like what Cherry said about, you know, if we really look at, you know, the having a baby versus raising a baby and supporting a baby, that's a really great analogy, because it shows you that, you know, during that period of gestation, right, there is a very creative aspect to it. Afterwards, you're like, okay, how do I
I'm done.
feed them?
Yeah.
You know, am I feeding them? I mean, there's a lot of neurosis.
How do I keep it?
that's-
Yeah.
it's a very, very neurotic type of thing where you're afraid to do it wrong. And I think it's probably more systemic in
in
ops
than it is
than
in
it
dev.
is in dev.
But I will put forth the proposition that dev went through a similar thing, where they went from being creative to being pure coders. And now
Fair.
they've come back to being creative again, right? And I think we'll see that with ops as well. But guys, believe it or not, half hour went so quickly.
I
here.
know.
already.
We're gonna need to. I've got my next panel in here, so I need to pull the plug. I apologize, but it's a conversation we'll continue, right? As we continue to see, we're all eagerly awaiting this ITIL for all. We'll see how ITSM continues to integrate in here, and we'll see. I think the continued maturation.
And we're
of
seeing
DevOps.
new things emerging.
Yeah, and we will be.
Which we're
Like I said,
excited about.
Dare I say verism, right? There's
Right,
new
yeah,
bodies
yeah.
popping up. There's the snafu catcher stuff. There's
You know
some
what?
exciting things.
Nothing stays the same.
Yeah,
IT,
that's
we love
true.
our frameworks. I mean, we
And-
do.
and-
We love our frameworks better than any other business
Nature of
unit in the
vacuum
business.
as
yeah,
well. So.
yeah. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rob,
Yeah.
Cherry, Jayne, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed presenting at DevOps Enterprise Summit UK this year. And this is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com, DevOps TV, DevOps UK, DevOps Enterprise Summit UK 2018. Have a great day.